Welcome into America's Retirement Headquarters, home of the Retirement Guys Formula and America's Medicare Associates. Securities offered through Peak Brokerage Services, LLC. Advisory services offered through the Retirement Guys Formula, registered investment advisor. America's Retirement Headquarters, America's Medicare Associates, and the Retirement Guys Formula are separate and independent entities from Peak Brokerage Services, LLC. I want to welcome you into, and thank you so much for joining us here on America's Retirement Headquarters, home of the Retirement Guys Formula, America's Medicare Associates, and Retirement Tax Partners with Nolan Baker, Dave Ross, and Andrew Baker. My name is Chris Swan. 419-794-3030 is the phone number. It's 419-794-3030, online, arhq.com. Today on the show, if you're changing jobs, what you should do with your 401k. If you're retiring with a mortgage, should you pay it off? And if you retire before you're eligible for Medicare, how do you navigate the healthcare environment? All this and more, but before we dive into any of it, let me check in. Gentlemen, glad to be with you. How are we today?
Yeah, it's great to be here. Always love coming and doing the shows. And something kind of interesting over the past couple of days, Facebook has those reminders that pop up on my phone when I'm scrolling through. And I saw a reminder. It was time that we had celebrated our 10-year anniversary on the radio. And of all things, that was 14 years ago that was posted. So 24 years here on the local radio station, on Toledo's largest talk station, WSPD. It's great to be here. Looking forward to another 24, and exciting today also to have Andrew on joining us, my son, to talk about some great ideas today.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys joining us again. 24 years. I had the pleasure for being with you here for a small fraction of that, but do appreciate that, and appreciate you taking time, as always, to spend with the listeners. So, gentlemen, glad to have you here, and listeners, once again, glad to have you as well. Let's go ahead and dive in here. As we know, NFL season is officially over. The Super Bowl is over. There are players that are going to be announcing retirements. Some of them are going to be have retirement thrust upon them. Someone who made that decision on his own was NFL great Warren Sapp. He decided to retire in 2008 at age 35, and he knew it'd be a matter of time before the Hall came a-calling, before he was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He was on the Vlad TV podcast, and he said what he didn't count on was losing his health insurance.
After 13 years in the National Football League, I wait 5 years to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. Guess what else happens at 5 years? Your insurance just got turned off. So for me, in my 13 years of going into the Hall, also now it's time for you to go find insurance. So who you know go insure somebody who played 65% of the snaps in the National Football League for 10 plus years in the trenches? That wouldn't be a very good investment for you as an insurance company, would it?
Now, I think we're all aware Warren Sapp was paid very handsomely during his time in the NFL, and so he had the financial means to take care of that problem. But for those that are going to be retiring early before Medicare eligibility kicks in, either on their own or something that is kind of thrust upon them, how do you explain to them the insurance gap that they're facing, and what kind of options are they looking at?
You know, here in America's Retirement Headquarters, focusing on that gap is really, I think, our area of expertise, and what we tend to focus on is our specialty there. Essentially what happens is most people, you know, when you turn 65 are going to go on to Medicare. Good majority of the people are familiar with, you know, Scott and Troy and Dan, who run America's Medicare Associates here at our headquarters, and, you know, we help people with that. And when you get to the Medicare age, the nice thing about that is it tends to be much more affordable in what the cost is for your Medicare coverage. But prior to that, if you retire, let's just say at the age of 62, you have to traditionally navigate affordable health care. Most people will ultimately go to healthcare.gov to get their health insurance during that time frame. And, you know, what they don't know, and what oftentimes they don't understand, is how the cost is associated with it. So let me give you a couple of ideas on how you can kind of fund that insurance gap. Number one is you need to understand that healthcare.gov, the cost and the credits that you get is based upon your countable income levels. So Dave, you know, a good example there is many people will retire and they'll have the lion's share of their money set aside in their 401k or a traditional tax-deferred retirement account. I also think a majority of people, when they come into the office, will, you know, traditionally start Social Security right away at retirement time. But what they don't realize is that by taking those withdrawals from their 401k and starting Social Security, those are both countable income sources to determine, what your healthcare cost is going to be. So when you hear some of these horror stories about thousands of dollars a month and, these massive potential out-of-pocket expenses, it's usually because of what their countable income level is. We have had lots of people that have come in and they've met with us before they retire. And in that situation, what we can do is help them to make sure that they can get their assets repositioned from the countable to the uncountable category. Client that comes to mind, she was 65, eligible for Medicare. He was 62. He's going to need to get his health insurance for the next 3 years. We looked at what their income needs were during this gap period, that from 62 to 65. And before he retired, the year before, we took that money and converted it over to a Roth IRA. And then by doing that, as he needed money from 62 to 65, taking it from the Roth IRA was not considered countable income. Or if he took money from personal savings that were not retirement accounts, another good way to do that as well. I know, Dave, you probably run into a lot of people as well, and that's one of the bigger concerns that they have is how to, figure out how to pay for their health insurance costs.
I would say this, I'm in the middle of it because my wife is a school teacher and she's looking to retire either at the end of 25-26 school year, or she may go one more year. So she's in the process of we're trying to figure out what would be the best way to proceed. And I'm also going to be eligible for Social Security this year. So we're making a lot of decisions about how we're going to approach not only how to position our assets for retirement, but also how we're going to navigate the health insurance. So when she retires, I'm going to enroll in Medicare because I'm already old enough to draw on it or to sign up for it. But there's all kinds of people that really have not considered how they're going to navigate health insurance. And I would say this, if you're 65 or older or approaching 65, America's Medicare Associates, there's no one better to help you make that decision and to help you navigate through that, making those decisions. And they're even good on the health insurance side. So if you've got questions, not only can the advisors here help you, but the Medicare people can help you as well. But these are big decisions, and the fact that the decisions you make are going to have a direct impact on what you're going to pay for health insurance, these are things that shouldn't be taken lightly.
You're looking at the health insurance cost. That's the key factor there is, planning ahead. So if you're within 5 years of retirement and you're going to retire before the age of 65, it's a perfect time to get together with us to talk about the plan and how to help you, fund that gap to help with the health insurance. Number 3 is, making sure that you're funding a health savings account while you're working. That could be another way that you're building up a nest egg of money to help cover some of those out-of-pocket expenses that you have or some of the costs that you're going to have associated during those gap years or in the future. And then number 4 is, comparing those plans annually. I know with the healthcare.gov system, there's only a window of time where you can do that, no different than having that window of time, when you're looking at your Medicare options. And if you think about all the changes that happen every year, I bet there's going to be more changes that occur this year as well. So we're happy to help out with those gap years.
It's understanding, what those are going to look like. And by no means are we going to dissuade you, or the team at America's Retirement Headquarters is going to dissuade you from retiring early, but just make sure that you take into all the considerations, especially as it comes to healthcare and what that could look like as a factor. But being able to run those numbers and show you what the plans and the options are is as simple as reaching out, taking that first step and setting up a time to speak with them. That phone number is, of course, 419-794-3030, or you can find out more about the team and schedule a time there as well as events that they've got coming up, talking about Medicare and healthcare and things like that. Welcome you to go to the events page over that on the website, and that is arhq.com. Of course, it's not just about, leaving the workforce and retiring, so there are some who are going to be transitioning from one job to another. And if that does happen, prior to retirement, of course. A major question that comes up is, what are you going to do with that 401k from your old employer? Guys, there was an article that I read that talked about the growing trend of job-changing cash-ins. In other words, they're withdrawing the money from their 401k balance rather than rolling it over to their next employer or putting it into an IRA. I've always been told that this is a mistake. It should not be done. Is that accurate? And if it is, why is it a mistake?
I don't know about you guys, but I think it is one of the biggest mistakes that you see people make. If they change jobs, if they lose their job, all of a sudden they go in and they're, eroding their 401k and they're taking money out. Why this is such a terrible idea to do that is, number one, is oftentimes you're going to be faced with heavy tax penalties and fees. So, you could have an early withdrawal penalty. Normally, if you're under the age 59 and a half, you can not only pay taxes as ordinary income, you could also face an additional 10% penalty on the amount that you take out. So you're going to have income taxes. Those income taxes, could push you into a higher tax bracket. You've got state taxes. So penalties and fees, I don't know about you guys, but that's one of the primary reasons that we tell people it's a bad idea to take out from your 401k right after a job change. Number two is losing out on that tax-deferred growth. I'm in my late 40s. Andrew is here in his young 20s. And the power that you have by investing in your 401k, Andrew's been with the company the last several years and been actively contributing, into that 401k. By him starting early and building that money up, he's going to get that magic of that tax-deferred growth. And if you cash in your account, you're going to lose that. You're basically going to have to start all over again. And if you think about what the compound effect that will be over time, it traditionally is going to be a disaster by the time you get to retirement. So instead of being able to be in a situation where you potentially could retire early, now that reduced savings is going to probably force you to wait until much later in life. So people don't realize that small withdrawal or the amounts has a major impact on the long-term savings. An example would be a $10,000 withdrawal at the age of 35 could cost over $57,000 at the age of 65, assuming a 7% average return. Dave, I know you probably have run into teachers, run into other people as well, and you've done some coaching and mentoring, and if unexpectedly they lose a job or they maybe just switch jobs and they decide what to do with their 401k. What's the advice that you're oftentimes giving them?
Well, it's certainly not a one-size-fits-all or a one-size-fits-most decision. It's an individualized decision. If it's the sole income in a household is coming from a person that just lost their job or was forced into a forced retirement situation, sometimes that money needs to be accessed. And that certainly, you could say, well, that might be a mistake, but if people have bills to pay, sometimes they have to consider using that money to pay those bills. But Nolan is exactly right when he talks about the lost future earnings or income or growth from cashing out an investment. There's a lot of those losses that you can never recover, because you know what? We could talk about how people who save little to no money in their 20s and 30s and all of a sudden in their 40s and 50s are trying to play catch up. They have to throw a lot of money at their retirement to have what they need to meet their needs in retirement. So, putting money to work, regardless of the sum, when you're a young person, that is a phenomenal decision that will bear lots of fruit. And I would say this, for the young, you should seriously be thinking about putting some of that money into a Roth option where you'll never have to pay federal income tax at retirement when you pull that money out. Because, who knows what the tax laws are going to be on retirement distributions 30 and 40 years from now.
Great advice. I think the other thing, Andrew, with you, working and putting money into the 401k, if you have an opportunity to put money into the 401k, you definitely want to put as much as you can to at least get the company matched. If there's free money on the table, you definitely want to take advantage of that. The next thing that you want to do is you want to start building and plan for an emergency, because life is going to happen, right? Mm-hmm. There's going to be something that comes up in life that you're going to have an emergency. It could be an unexpected job loss. It could be a flood in your basement. It could be anything. That's what's called life. So in addition to that, making sure that you're saving and building money in accounts that you have the ability to access in the event of the emergency is a good idea. I think a good rule of thumb during your working years is to try to save up about 6 months worth of income. Because in 6 month time frame, if you lost your job, you should have the ability to go out and find some other source of employment. That's going to give you breathing room. I know as you get older in life, and a lot of the times we work with retirees, for retirees that are taking, withdrawals from their investment accounts, we generally have backups that way if and when the market's down. I don't know, any thoughts or any, ideas that you have regarding, 401ks, job changes, or, what would happen in the event of a crisis, what you would do?
Well, I'll say one thing that I kind of came to my mind when you were talking about the early withdrawal fee and just fees in general on your 401ks. Former employer that I worked for, I had to close that out this year. It was a super small amount, but I do have to pay those early withdrawal fees and the taxes and all that. And I couldn't imagine if I had to do that at a much older age, how much that would impact me for my future. Luckily, it was a much smaller amount where I have plenty of time to build up my other 401k and have that build out.
I've told this story before, and it still rings true for me. When I first set out in the working world when I was 16, I was bussing tables, so it really didn't apply then. But my mom said, when you get a job that offers that 401k, take advantage of that match. That is free money, and then never touch that 401k. Now, obviously, thus far, it's held me pretty true, taking advantage of that match, and I have no plans on withdrawing that money because I have learned about the penalties that do incur as I get closer and closer to retirement. I'm still a little ways off, mind you, not nearly as far off as Andrew is, but I'm still a little ways off. And I know that once I get, 59 and a half and beyond that, maybe looking at other options on how to safely get that money taken out. And so for our listeners out there who may be in that situation, who have heeded that same sort of advice and they need some guidance on there, reach out to the team at America's Retirement Headquarters, 419-794-3030, or go into the website at arhq.com. But Dave, like you said, there are circumstances out there where people do need the money. The same sort of situation when it comes to, turning on Social Security at 62 as soon as possible. If it is a necessity, then it has to be done. But make sure you understand what those ramifications are going to look like, what the loss and potential growth and things like that, the penalties, what that could look like, and then maybe explore other options. The team at America's Retirement Headquarters can walk you through that process as well. But you do have to reach out and set up a time to speak with them. It's as easy as reaching out, picking up the phone, 419-794-3030. Something else that I know you guys advocate for when it comes to entering into retirement is being as debt-free as possible. And comedian Bill Burr has heeded that advice. He'll be the first to tell you he's paid off his house. He told the Wall Street Journal he stepped up his mortgage payments years ago because he doesn't believe in just sending in the minimum.
I could have done that dumb thing where you just look, all I want to know is what's the payment. And you hear the shackles, and then you're just on this thing that just takes you under. Or you can buy something that you can kick the out of the principal, which is what you want to do, because that your house is gaining value. It's gaining value for the bank because you're paying interest. So it's like as your house is gaining this amount of value, you're paying this amount of interest. So, and then with all the upkeep and all the taxes and all the crap, water damage, it's like in the end of it, after 30 years of this crap, you're lucky if you break even.
Now, as I mentioned, being as debt-free as possible entering into retirement is something that people strive for, and there are some other radio personalities that say no debt under any circumstances. What do you tell clients that are retiring with a mortgage? Should they just go ahead and pay it off regardless? What if their interest rate is actually pretty low?
Well, I would say, for myself personally, being debt free is the concept that I try to live by. There was a book that I had read years ago that had talked about, strategies to reduce and eliminate debt. And I really kind of followed that approach while my wife and I were kind of young and, making sure that we had our credit cards paid off. I think my strategy in the college days was keep my credit cards maxed, because if I dropped my credit card, nobody could charge anything on it, but a terrible strategy. Right. So we got those all paid off. Then we paid off our cars and we, continued down that path. One of the things that was important to us is then when we had children is making sure that our house mortgage was paid off by the time our kids went to college. So not only were we saving for them in 529s and other vehicles to help them, but if you think about the money that I was putting aside every month towards a mortgage payment, if I could have it paid off by the time they went to college, I could take that money and redirect it to use to pay towards their college. And that's exactly what we did. So, I'm really proud to say that I don't have a mortgage. I paid it off before my kids went to college and was able to redirect that money. The same would be true as if we think about the hundreds of clients that we work with. I would tell you that a general consensus about what I see with our clients is that those that are out there enjoying life and doing a lot of fun things, they're debt free. Do you see that same with the people that you're working with?
Absolutely, I do. And I would say that, as a person who, our goal is to have our mortgage paid off in the next 12 months, which is going to be shortly before my wife retires from teaching. I think being debt free is a great concept, because now you don't have to factor in all these obligations into what your budget is, and you can start thinking about having a little bit more fun with the money that you have. I got an interesting story in this regard. I had a client several years ago who basically came to me and says, Dave, I owe $50,000 on my mortgage. Do you think I should pay it off? And I told him that I would be happy to do the math and give him some alternatives and some options. And at the end of that, he decided to pay off his mortgage, which I thought was a great decision for him. About 6 months later, he calls me and he says, Dave, I made a major purchase. And I go, what did you do? And he said, I bought a Suburban with all the bells and whistles on it. And I asked him, I said, so how much is your car payment in relationship to what you were paying on the mortgage? And he said, it's exactly the same. Oh. And my heart just sank, because he took out a 7-year loan. And I'm like, oh boy, all of a sudden, paying off the mortgage didn't look like such a great idea. I believe the interest rate on that loan was higher than the mortgage loan. And I'm going, well, you know what? This is the reality of what we deal with as financial advisors. People they make unilateral decisions that can affect them. But you know what? With working with us here, we can craft a plan that will help people make decisions that will affect their retirement time in a very positive way. And if debts can be erased, eliminated, or whatever, that's going to help a retired person navigate how their life's going to move forward.
It's especially important when you're looking at cash flow. So, all roads lead to income in retirement time. And, if you're thinking about some of the differences of opinions, if you have a low interest rate and you're making more money, say, in your stock market account, one might argue, why pay it off when you have, such great returns in your stock market or investment account when your interest rate's so low on your mortgage. But it comes down to cash flow. So if you have a small balance, but you're paying $1,500 or $2,000 a month towards a mortgage payment, taking some money out of the investment account while the markets are high, paying that off is going to free up that $1,500 a month or $2,000 a month cash flow that you have going out to that mortgage is where it's going to be helpful. But the thing that you do have to watch out for is you have to watch out that how it can impact your healthcare cost. So again, as we talked about earlier, if you're going to retire before the age 65, those people who retire early get affordable health care. And then if you go after age 65, go on to Medicare. But your health insurance cost is based upon what your countable income level is, both for affordable health care and also for Medicare premium. So it may not make sense to take it and pay it all in 1 year. Maybe you do it over a couple of years. Again, sitting down with a tax professional, meeting with like our tax team at Retirement Tax Partners can kind of help you out.
Obviously, I think it makes sense. It's pretty easy to understand. You know, if there's $1,500 that is no longer going towards a bank note to your mortgage payment, that's $1,500 that you get to utilize towards whatever. But knowing the actual cost, what is it going to cost to pay that off? If the tax ramifications or the healthcare ramifications are counterintuitive, then maybe not doing it all at once, but gradually getting there, you know, at an accelerated pace like Bill Burr did. But running those numbers is something that the team at America's Retirement Headquarters can help you with as part of that planning process, getting you to, through, and beyond retirement. All you need to do to get started, set up a time to speak with them. You can go to arhq.com, set up a time right there, find out about the upcoming events that they've got going on in the next couple weeks and schedule a time there. Give a call, 419-794-3030. As a woman wrote into an advice column on moneywise.com saying she inherited $680,000 from her parents. The advisor who manages it is charging her a 1.75% fee, and she was wondering if that's too much, and if so, if she should find somebody else. When it comes to fees and the value, what should she be considering when it comes to making that sort of decision?
Well, I'm really glad that she's getting educated about, you know, what her costs are, and so she can make a good educated decision. You know, when you look at the world of investing, oftentimes investors just focus on the bottom line or total return. And, you know, any advisor, including myself, can't control what the overall stock market does. And so when you look at the things that are controllable items in a portfolio, cost is one of the items. Income is another one as well. You know, you can choose to invest in, say, dividend-paying companies or, you know, bonds that pay interest or not. So those are controllable items. And understanding, you know, the cost that's associated with it, I think is very important. You know, when you're looking at it, what you have to understand is that there are different costs in the industry today based upon, you know, who you work with and how things work. A good example of that is America's Medicare Associates here at the office. You know, most people are familiar with Scott, Troy, and Dan and, you know, what they do on helping people out with health insurance. But one of the great things about them is you'll never pay a fee and you'll never get a bill from them. So America's Medicare Associates, it doesn't charge a fee for anything that they do. Instead, they get paid from the insurance companies. There are people in the financial services industry that work similar to that. They're commission-based brokers. Sometimes, as an example, if you purchase an annuity from somebody, the insurance company normally is paying the salesperson or the agent in that particular transaction. So if you invest $100,000, you're going to normally see your statement as $100,000. You're going to earn interest on that $100,000. You're not paying, in this example, that 1.75% fee that's on that account. On the flip end of the scale, you also, you know, want to make sure that you understand what the total cost is. So there are accounts, as an example, things like variable annuities. So with a variable annuity, you may not pay a 1.75% management fee, but oftentimes your fees and expenses, when you add them up and things that are buried in fees and expenses, you know, it can get very costly. So as an example, in a variable annuity, the first thing that you're going to have is you're going to have a mortality expense ratio. That might run 1.25%. Then your investments are going to be put into some type of sub-account. Those sub-account fees and expenses could tack on another, 1% in buried in expenses. You could have then a rider associated with it, whether it's an income rider or death benefit rider that could add another, 1% on it as well. So, sometimes you get these things that say, well, it doesn't cost me anything, but when you read the fine print, you find out that it has, 3% of fees and expenses as well. You'll oftentimes hear people say, well, that guy up the street was charging 1.75 and somebody up the road is willing to do it at 1%. But in my experience, in a lot of situations, many local advisors, those advisors also around the U.S., typically are matching you up at what is called a third-party money manager, meaning that they're not usually the ones buying the end investment. And so that third-party money manager ultimately has fees and expenses associated with it as well. So all of this stuff, it kind of makes your head spin when you stop and think about fees and expenses. Again, the first thing is the good point is she's asking the questions and she's starting to become educated about what the fees and expenses are. The cheapest isn't always the best, but cost certainly counts. And you need to make sure that you're getting more value than what your expenses are. That's one of the great things that we do in our independent portfolio analysis is we can help you slice and dice and help you really get a better understanding as far as what your fees and expenses are, if there are different layered fees and expenses, then help you do an analysis to determine, which of those fees are adding value to you. I would say, the same thing, Dave, in a lot of different situations when, people work with you, making sure that they understand the different costs and options are an important part, right?
Absolutely.
One thing that I've seen that you do that has been, really unique, again, working with you is not every time somebody needs to just transfer their money or have you manage the money and charge fees and expenses. So something else that you do is you do consulting work.
The interesting thing about consulting work is this. There's a lot of times, and I've had these kinds of meetings with people where we're talking about their financial situation and their goals and objectives, and they basically say, my brother-in-law handles all of my money, and I can't fire him, but I need planning services. And that's one of the things about America's Retirement Headquarters that really appealed to me and caused me to want to join the team here, is that planning and a good solid financial plan is the bedrock of a person planning for their retirement. So a lot of advisors aren't doing the planning side of it. So by entering into a consulting service situation, the client is basically paying me for advice. And sometimes that advice is how to position money and create a retirement team action plan. It could be implementing the independent income system to determine where their reliable income and how they can use their investments after retirement. And also it helps them come up with a plan for what happens if I need long-term care, what are the tax ramifications, and what about estate planning? We can pull all of those things together in a consulting service. If you hire us on the money management front, you automatically get that. But you can it's kind of like an a la carte menu. What is it that you need, and how can we give you what it is you're looking for? And I think it's just wonderful that we can provide straightforward advice, and people can use that advice, and they can work with however many advisors they feel they need to attack their personal situation.
Yeah, so really, customizable and being able to put things together. Andrew, I know, when people work with you and you run a lot of the fixed income department, looking at things like, high interest money market accounts, maybe keeping track of what some of the CD rates are, what some of the fixed rates are, helping people kind of leverage their assets in different type of index annuities and different choices. In those situations, when people work with you, they're not paying those asset management fees, are they?
That is correct. They are not.
Yep. So in this case, again, in that example, you're getting compensated from the insurance company by trying to match them up with whoever would offer the best possible rate. The great thing is if you're listening to this and you're wondering, am I getting what it's worth? Could I receive additional benefits or services? Maybe it's estate planning, tax strategies, retirement planning. Could you get similar results at a lower cost? What is my advisor even charging me? The one thing that we do here at America's Retirement Headquarters is we offer that complimentary get-together first appointment where we can go over and do that analysis for you, and we'll provide you an independent portfolio analysis to help you understand what your expenses are. And then what we will do is we will type up and provide you with a written retirement team action plan. And inside of that team action plan, we will detail any costs associated with any of the different services that we offer, giving you the ability to decide which of any of those options make sense for you. And then you're fully educated about the different costs associated with it, and being very transparent and helping you out. So I'm more than happy to help if you're confused about your fees and expenses.
As we spoke about earlier, the less money that you're paying towards a mortgage is more money you get to keep for yourself. Hopefully, the fees that you're paying in a retirement account doesn't equate to a mortgage payment, but the less that you're paying in fees, the more you get to keep for yourself. But some fees, they're certainly worth the value, but you don't know if you don't know what you're paying for. So that fee analysis is part of that complimentary time to come in and speak with America's Retirement Headquarters. Just starts with reaching out, arhq.com. You can give a call, 419-794-3030. And then, of course, the events that they have going on that are upcoming, there's no registration fee for those either. You can come in and see what they're about in an informal setting. They do ask that you reserve a space, though, so they don't have any to account for. You can find a full list of those on the website at arhq.com. There was a recent study by Mass Mutual that found the average retirement age this year is 62, which average means that there's some that are going to do it beforehand, some after. Not everyone, of course, can pull that off, but an article I read at gobankingrates.com said there are certain signs that could tell if you might be able to retire at that age, including you've got 2 or more income streams and no debt. You can live on 4% of your investments, and you have enough to support yourself for 20 or more years. These all seem like pretty good ideas, good things here. Is there anything missing from that list that people should be aware of?
Well, I'm absolutely biased here because this is, one of the things that we've built and put in place for helping our clients out. And so if you get a chance, go on Google, and on Google type in independent income system. Mm-hmm. You'll see a 15-minute video that I walk through talking about, different threats and opportunities that are facing retirees. In this particular situation, with somebody being able to retire at age 62, a couple of the things that were pointed out, you've got 2 or more income streams and no debt. Love it. You can live off of a 4% withdrawal rate from your investment. Love it. You have enough money to support you for 20 or more years. Also love that as well. The other things I think to think about is factoring a healthcare cost into the equation. And that healthcare cost is trying to figure out if you're going to retire at 62, how do you navigate affordable healthcare before retirement time and knowing how that system works onto transitioning into Medicare. And then down the road, thinking about a plan that's designed to protect your assets if you or a loved one needed some type of long-term care. One of the things that we had talked about earlier is, we do a lot of consulting work for clients. And in doing the consulting work, building out these financial plans and written retirement income plans. When I build out a written retirement income plan, one of the things that we will oftentimes do is look at the different things that could happen in life. What if somebody passed away early? What if Social Security declined? What if interest rates go up? What if the market crashed? And what you will see in many of the plans, if you add into it that one of the spouses goes into a nursing facility, for 2 years at the end of their life, it'll oftentimes take and it'll destroy a retirement plan. It'll take it from, what at one point maybe was a 95% probability of success all the way down to maybe a 40% probability of success. So don't forget about developing a plan that's designed to protect your assets if you or a loved one needs some type of long-term care. And there's a lot of other solutions besides buying long-term care insurance. The next thing is that you'll notice, again, in our philosophy of the independent income system is having a bucket of money that's designed to give you a future pay raise. Inflation, I think, Dave, for a while now hadn't been a big issue until, the last couple of years. But, for retirees today living on fixed income, if they did not have a bucket of money that's designed to give them a pay raise in the future, times are tough right now, and times can get tougher if these tariffs and inflation comes back and costs continue to go up, because I don't see cost really going down unless you're looking for another TV, but I don't know how many TVs anybody needs.
The things that people, consumers, the average American, of which we're all among them, those costs are going up. And you know what? When the government provides you with an inflation rate, that doesn't factor in things that you are spending money on. And it gets a little bit confusing when somebody says, well, it appears that inflation is under control. And it's usually the Federal Reserve Bank that's saying that. And people are going, well, they're telling me that inflation's under control, but it sure seems like I'm spending a lot of money on a lot of different things. So when you develop your plan, I think it's absolutely critical to have all of the elements of the retirement team action plan covered. And the likelihood of someone needing long-term care, that's real. And when do people need it? If that's true that 62 is the average age of a retiree, they may not need it until they're 80 to 85 years old. If you've got a married couple that's 65, there's a high probability that one of those spouses is going to live into their 90s. So longevity risk is a definite issue. By plugging your scenario into the independent income system really gives you a solid handle on what you can count on and what you should be looking at in terms of your income needs in retirement. So we do a great job of laying that out here, and it would be time well spent for anybody to come in here and ask how we would implement the independent income system and put together a retirement team action plan for anyone that's looking to retire so that we cover all the bases that they need.
It's as easy as going to the website to set up that time, arhq.com. While you have a tab open, you can Google independent income system, check out that video, and then come into the office and see how it all works together for you, how it can work for you. Let them run the numbers, show you, you may be on track to retire, or, there may be work that still needs to be done. But it's not going to cost you anything but your time, and it could be some invaluable time, as Dave said there again. So arhq.com is how you get started, or give a call, 419-794-3030. It's again, 419-794-3030. Can you read cursive writing, like really, really old cursive writing? Then maybe you'd like to volunteer at the U.S. Archives. Tony DeCopel with CBS News explains.
They're looking for a kind of translation service. The job is, and it's a volunteer position, but an important one, to translate cursive writing from the 17 and 1800s and some in the 1900s into computer text typing. So it's basically English to English, but you've got to read letters in cursive and then transcribe them so that the National Archives can help people engage with history. The reason this is so important is apparently people can't read cursive anymore.
One reason is that many schools don't teach cursive anymore. My son is in third grade and it has yet to be brought up. Things have also changed when it comes to retirement planning. Can we talk about how it's not our grandparents' retirement anymore?
Yeah, we've got some good pointers on it. It's not your grandparents' retirement anymore, but having Andrew here on the show, being 21, cursive, is that something that was taught to you back in the school days?
I'll say, yeah, back in elementary, I do remember learning cursive. I can cursive my name, and if I'm really down trying to look and write out cursive, I could probably get a few sentences, but it's been years upon years since I've written in full sentences, and I can understand it for the most part, but there might be certain times I get a little stumped.
How about being able to read other people's cursive writing?
It really does depend on, I guess my view on it too would be how cursive they write it. I know some people can get really fancy, and depending on how much cursive compared to it being normal English, it can sometimes get a little tricky.
I remember a trip that we had take out to Buffalo, New York, and we were going out and going to use some go-karts, and I think you had to be 10 at that time, and I think you were 8, and you had to sign the waiver that you were 10 years old, and I remember you printing your name versus signing in cursive. I'm like, oh boy, here we go. They're going to throw us out of here. But yeah, I guess that's the new norm. But, when we think about retirement, it's not your grandparents' retirement anymore. Things are really different today for retirees. That's good and bad. So, when we think about some of the negatives in the good old days, you used to work for a company for most of your lifetime, and you retired, and you had a steady stream of income known as a pension. That transition has shifted today to where most investors, they have their 401ks, and if you don't save for your own retirement, nobody else is going to help you out to do that. You want to plan for a longer retirement. I think, if you look at life expectancy has gotten a lot better today, and so you want to plan for a long, long time. You can expect to live 30, possibly 35 or 40 years in retirement time, and you want to have income sources that are going to last as long as you do. You want to expect things like Social Security is going to change. I mean, there's things that are coming up in the future that Social Security is, struggling, and now, what are they going to do to try to solve that issue? So having a backup plan, not relying on the government to take care of you. On the flip end of the sale, some of the positives are technology. We can get access to information today that would have taken hours upon hours to do in the past, helping people figure out their fees and expenses, helping them navigate the landscape of retirement planning, helping them put together a clear picture and something that they understand, and using the tools and resources and the technology that is offered today in the industry makes that a lot clearer, and I think it helps create more of a laser shot approach to making that retirement better than maybe what your grandparents' retirement was.
I remember in a previous career, I worked at a pharmacy, and so I had to not just learn cursive, I had to learn how to read doctor's handwriting, which is a whole other, I don't use that in any way these days, but it is constantly evolving landscape when it comes to retirement planning, when it comes to education, and if you need help with the education as it pertains to the retirement planning, well, the team at America's Retirement Headquarters, they're here for you to help you out. So all you have to do is set up a time to speak with them. You can go to any number of the upcoming financial events that they've got going on. You can check them all out at arhq.com. Click on the events tab, find one that works best for your schedule, and set up a time to speak with them. Or if you can't make any of those, or you just want to skip the line and get in front of them as soon as possible, give a call, 419-794-3030. Once again, it's 419-794-3030, and they'd love to have that conversation with you. Continue the education, not just on a 50,000 foot view level as we could talk about here, but really getting into the details as it pertains to your circumstances. What's more important, after all, than your own circumstances in retirement? So again, they look forward to speaking with you. Just set up that time, 419-794-3030. As always, want to thank you for joining us here on the show, here on America's Retirement Headquarters. It is the home of the Retirement Guys Formula, America's Medicare Associates, and Retirement Tax Partners. Hope you have a great week ahead of you. Gentlemen, appreciate you taking the time as always. And as we wrap up, want to leave you with the final word.
Well, we're tax season right now, and if you haven't got your tax meeting set up, don't forget to take advantage of that 50% off what you paid last year tax special that we have here at America's Retirement Headquarters with Retirement Tax Partners. You can schedule that and get that coupon at retirementtaxpartners.com. Either way, we'll be back same time, same channel right here on Toledo's largest talk station, 1370 WSPD. We'll see you back next week. And remember, when you think retirement, think America's Retirement Headquarters. It's home of the Retirement Guys Formula, America's Medicare Associates, and Retirement Tax Partners.
America's Retirement Headquarters is located at 1700 Woodlands Drive in Maumee, Ohio. You can reach them by calling 419-794-3030 or online at americasretirementheadquarters.com. Exposure to ideas and financial vehicles discussed should not be considered investment advice or recommendation to buy or sell any financial vehicle. Investments can fluctuate and when redeemed may be worth more or less than when originally invested. Nolan Baker is not affiliated with nor endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency and does not provide legal or tax advice. Please consult with your attorney, accountant, and or tax advisor for advice concerning your particular circumstance. Annuity guarantees rely solely on the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance and annuity products offered through Nolan Baker, Ohio Insurance License Number 27787.